your own personal program. Someone who's made of code, who likes Depeche Mode. Sit down and watch Tron. So, I won't lie. I was trying to think of like a 30 Seconds to Mars parody to start that with, and the closest I could come up with was like This Is War, like This Is Tron, and my brain couldn't get past from the earth to the grid, we've got Jeff Bridges. So like, that's so stupid. But, okay, so hi. I watched Tron Ares a few weeks ago, and I've been meaning to do a video on it. I've been meaning to talk about it for a while. I just haven't. Oops, my bad. But, I watched it in IMAX with a couple friends of mine, and what's really funny is earlier that day, if not the night before, I just went to the court website. Almost went to the theater website just to make sure. Like, I haven't gotten any tickets in advance. It's a Thursday afternoon. Surely they're not going to be super busy. Surely there's not going to be a lot of tickets sold. Oh, that is an empty theater. Are we going to get an entire IMAX theater to ourselves? That sounds amazing. Because there are a few, like, I don't want to say that because, like, I have had cinematic experiences where, you know, there's a whole theater and everyone is getting into the movie and enjoying the movie, and it's awesome. I remember a friend of mine reacting, what was it called? The Force Awakens. Sorry, like, I couldn't remember what the first movie in the sequel trilogy was. And when Han died, he just went, no! Like, I remember that. Like, that is a core memory. But there's also something about watching a movie by yourself. Like when I was in a theater alone watching Cocaine Bear. That was great. And I kind of wish we had that with Tron, but alas, there were some people who showed up. It was maybe like 10 people total. But even still, I had a really good experience with this movie. I was honestly kind of surprised. I've seen all 3 Tron films. The first one, I definitely enjoy. I think it's like a really fun 80s movie with a really cool aesthetic, and as a Kingdom Hearts fan, I have a special attachment to it. Tron Legacy, I also have an attachment to, because it's the first movie I ever saw in IMAX. And I thought it was a great experience, and rewatching it, like, even on a small screen, like, yeah, this movie still looks great. Yeah, this soundtrack is still fantastic. I get what people say, and like, man, this movie's really good until people start talking. But even then, like, I don't think the story's, like, awful. I think it's fine. I think it's passable. But then we get Tron Ares, where I was really hearing people say, man, it's really good until people start talking. Like, this movie just didn't do it for me, and I understand that. But I'll be honest, I enjoyed the movie as a whole a lot more than I expected to. So the way I kind of went ahead and organized my thoughts, 3 main categories. Just, here's some cool shit that happened in the movie that I enjoyed. Here's some dumb shit that happened in the movie that I really just didn't work for me or I didn't care for. And then here's some stuff that kind of made me think for a while. And I'll go ahead and say full spoilers for everything. If you want just a quick, non-spoilery thoughts on the film, I will say this. Like I said a bit ago, I enjoyed the movie more than I thought. I think the visuals are impeccable. I think the soundtrack is fantastic. There's just enough humanity in the characters, and it's mostly for me in some specific scenes, but there's just enough humanity to make me feel like I don't want to say the movie was worth watching, because the spectacle alone to me was genuinely worth the price of admission. But just enough humanity to make it feel, I don't know, like a little bit more worth it, I guess, for lack of a better term. So, I think that's it. Now I'm gonna go full spoilers and start with just some of the cool shit that I liked. Number one, the soundtrack is really good. There were several points in the movie where I'm just watching going, just kind of like bopping in my seat, and at one point I look at my buddy next to me, like he's not looking at me at all, but he's also just kind of bopping to the movie, and there's a point where I whispered to him like, hey man, I see you dancing in your chair. And I'm not throwing any shade. I'm not throwing any judgment. I'm doing the same thing. I just think it's cool that both of us are doing this. This is kind of awesome. And yeah, the visuals are also really cool. Like, I just love that Tron aesthetic. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. But you know what I'm talking about. But they just said, okay, what if instead of blue and white, it's mostly red and black? And yeah, that looks really visually cool, I can't lie. Like, even just the Disney logo, where it's like, all right, here's, the big castle in the river, but Tron. It looks really cool! And I know there's, like, a good amount of movies where they will do that, where they might try to mess with the way the Disney logo looks to kind of fit the theme of the movie. I'm like, man, this looks really sick here. Probably my favorite scene in the movie, at least in terms of just like the visuals and like the aesthetics, is the hacking, where instead of just like, okay, boop boop boop, hit some code, like we're in, it's this whole heist scene with, okay, so his name isn't Tron, his name is Ares. There is a non-zero chance I will refer to him as Tron, as Ares, and as Jared Leto throughout the video, and I apologize. I'm gonna go into, I know at some point I'm gonna call him Tron, even though Tron himself is not in the movie. But so Ares and his droogs, only one of them I remember by name, and that's Athena. We're gonna talk about Athena a little bit later. But so, they're supposed to hack the rival company. So, they all kind of get together and, I think they, like, use a machine to, like, blow a hole in it or something. And they all start, like, diving through the hole as the, the data starts to reform. And there's this one part where he has to, like, walk up a wall. So he just starts walking up the wall and, like, the camera turns. Like, oh, this is so cool. And then when it's time for the security to show up, there's just a horde of programs. These, I'm gonna just call Trons. Maybe they are supposed to be, like, reboots of Tron. I don't know. But, like, this whole army of Tron show up. And it's just Dynasty Warriors at this point. Just beating the hell out of all of them. Like, this is just cool. I'm having a really good time watching this. Thank you, movie, for more or less giving me exactly what I wanted. The scene that's, like, in all of the trailers, you have IRL light cycles just, like, making the trails, and they last for a long time. They do dissipate, and they're, like, a cop car gets cut in half. That's really cool. There's this one scene where Athena gets, like, knocked off her light cycle, and I do not remember the main, woman's name. I'm not even going to pretend that I remember it, and I feel bad because I'm going to get to a scene later where I'm like, I really, really liked this with her. But she looks over the edge and doesn't see Athena, and then you look and Athena's just like she's Robert Patrick from T2 and just like running up the parking garage. And it's like, I don't know if this is supposed to be funny. I don't think it's necessarily supposed to be funny, but something about it just kind of had me cracking up the entire time this scene was happening. I thought it was really fun. There is a bit near the end, like I'd say maybe around the start of the third act, where I almost called him Tron, where Ares goes into Flint. Yeah, that's it. Sam Flynn's like old computer, and it's this 80s looking Tron. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I know these rooms from Kingdom Hearts 1. Excuse me, Kingdom Hearts 2. But like, I know these from Kingdom Hearts. This is really neat. I appreciate that. And I really liked them keeping that like 80s older Tron aesthetic. I thought that was super dope. Just Athena in general. I really liked her. And I won't lie, part of that is my own intrinsic bias. Because I've mentioned I have a book that just came out, and one of the main characters is named Athena. And like she's also like has white hair, is someone that is like very strong, is someone who's very stubborn. I'm like, they're definitely not one-to-one, but I can see a bit of my Athena in there, and that just makes me like you. Then you've got the just ga scene, which like I like you. As the movie goes on, I do like the juxtaposition between her and Ares, where Ares is the program who, kind of starts to gain some, maybe sentience isn't the right word, but almost kind of starts to develop a soul, like a sense of morality. It's like, I disagree with my programming, or at the very least, I disagree with my orders and my prime directive. I'm going to take some agency. And then you have Athena, who's like, okay, these are my orders. I'm going to do it, right or wrong. Even if the person who gave them to me is starting to say, maybe you should stop or slow down. Like, hey, bucko, you're the one who told me to do this by any means necessary. And if you're getting in my way, by any means necessary, that includes you too. Are we going to have a problem, sir? No. That's what I thought. Like, oh, she's so cool. She's so fun. And like, I'm sorry. I just like her insane single-mindedness was so insane. It was really fun for me to watch. There is a like vehicle chase scene that happens in the grid where they're in like this ocean of data. And I thought that was pretty fun. Like, there were some neat explosions. I do really, kind of like the data river ocean thing. It was cool. There is this scene that happens, like, maybe 5 minutes before that, where a bunch of kids, like, they're in the grid, and they're in this tower, and the tower's, like, the floor. I almost said ceiling, but it's the complete opposite. But it was, like, the top floor. The floor collapses, and as they're falling, like, some of the programs, like, hitting the beams supporting the tower and, like, breaking and shattering, which, number one, is just really cool. Number two, reminded me a lot of Final Destination Bloodlines. Like, I'm assuming this is a coincidence, but this is straight up from the collapse of the Skyview, which, having seen every Final Destination movie this year, I think I can safely say is my favorite opening disaster. There's some... Then again, the Lot Truck. It is a classic for a reason. But man, like, I loved the collapse of the Skyview. And seeing it kind of almost recreated in Tron, like, I wasn't expecting it, but it was certainly welcome. I thought that was really cool. And I really liked any moment one of the soldiers disintegrated, whether it was Ares, whether it was Athena, or like one of the others, because a big point in the movie is we only have, I believe the number was 29, like we only have 29 minutes that we can create something, whether it's a soldier or like a vehicle or a weapon, and they're searching for the permanence code, the thing that'll make a construct that's be permanent and last forever. But anytime they get destroyed, like if it's an object, it just disintegrates, it's whatever. But when it's one of the programs, you kind of feel it. Like, it looks super painful. They make it sound super painful. Like, no. They are dying every time this happens. And it's not like every Ares is a new Ares. It's at least kind of my understanding. Like, no, it's the same dude every time. He's learning from every experience. And I think he also, like, feels that pain of death. And, like, it's not quite ReZero because he's not looping, but in a way, it kind of reminds me of that. And I don't know, I just kind of liked how intense that was and how uncomfortable that was. It's one of those things that, for me, I'm like, okay, there's parts of the writing that don't necessarily sell me on Ares getting his humanity and, like, almost having a soul and whatnot. But then anytime I see this, I'm like, no. I understand why he's not happy with his situation, why he's not happy with his creator. Because it's not just Dillinger is the name of his creator. It's not just the fact that Dillinger put him in this situation. It's how callous he is about it. Like, how, like, no, like, I can make however many you need. I can destroy him at any time. That's not a problem. And the moment he says that, Ares kind of gives him this look, like, really? Am I that expendable? That's not okay. And I did kind of like that. So, moving on to some of the things for me that just didn't quite work. I have to start with Dillinger. I didn't find him that interesting. His character is like, he's a billionaire, I assume billionaire, might have been like multimillionaire, but incredibly wealthy CEO who believes he can get away with anything and is on top of the world and is super arrogant and all of that. It's very reminiscent of how Luthor was portrayed in the recent Superman movie, except I really liked that portrayal of Lex Luthor. And I think the reason it worked is because he's someone who's really, to me, he's very charismatic. He's someone who's, like, always in control, always super calm and collected, until the end of the movie where it's like, okay, now that it's, like, clear you are not gonna get away with this, everything is spiraling. But until then, like, because so I guess that's the thing. Let me rephrase that, because they're always going 1A, like, that is not a calm and collected person. Let me rephrase. But he is always in control of the situation. So even when he is being very emotional and very passionate, I don't feel like this guy's a poser. Dillinger, on the other hand, I'm like, no, he's just a rich dude that thinks he can get away with really, really blatant crimes. Because Lex is smart enough to cover that up really thoroughly. It eventually gets found out, which almost makes his, like, downfall and defeat that much more satisfying, because you see all, like, the effort he took to conceal his tracks. Here, this dude is doing nothing to conceal his tracks, and his own people are telling him, you're a moron, you need to stop. Or at least slow down, but you need to stop. He's like, no, it'll be fine, because I'm rich, and I'm smart. And, like, it's just not that interesting to me, personally, and it's not that fun. And then, by the end of the movie, now that, like, his life is completely crumbled, he sends himself into the grid. And there's an end credit scene. It's more like a mid-credit scene where he, like, grabs a disc and basically starts turning into Commander Sark. And I remember audibly laughing and thinking to myself, wait, you think you're getting a sequel? This is a Tron movie. You don't get sequels until, like, at least the decade has passed. So, and I think it's kind of bold of you to, like, tease an end credit scene here, but this was how you did it? You think this dude is interesting enough or cool enough to be like, hey, you gotta watch the next movie because you get to see this dude come back? Really? Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know. Like, if you showed me Athena again, maybe I would still kind of think, you guys think you're getting a sequel? Like, this is Tron, dude. This is not how this works. But at least, like, I like her and think she's fun. I don't know about this guy, Chief. The next thing that didn't quite work for me is, as I mentioned like a couple times, Ares, I think he moves a bit too quickly from I am computer, I am soldier, I do what master says, into now I'm a bit more of a thunkin' man, and, I can think for myself and, have my own opinions on things. I don't know if I like what master says, into, okay, y'all, so I kind of have a bit of a personality now. Like, I'm not quite Tony Stark, but I'm a bit more quippy. I'm a bit more sarcastic. I'm a pretty cool guy. Have I mentioned today that I like Depeche Mode? Because I really, really, really like Depeche Mode. And it's like that part in particular just felt really jarring. Like, wait, where did this come from? Like, I don't know, like if Depeche Mode did the soundtrack to the movie, especially because there's a point later where Ares is like, I love them because of, how well they blend, like, electronic music and, like, other kinds of music and, like, blah, blah, blah. That would almost make sense in kind of like a meta way, like, like when you're in the grid, the music is diegetic. I think diegetic means you can hear it, and non-diegetic means you don't hear it. Maybe I have those backwards. But it could be a thing like, no, when you're in the grid and you're hearing that banging music, you actually hear it. And Ares kind of likes that music. And so he's like, oh, these are the people who, like, made the music for the grid. I think it's great, blah, blah, blah. I could buy it. But he listens to, like, one song and kind of starts going into a rant about how great they are. And the person he's with is really confused and uncomfortable for, like, other reasons, too. But I'm like, what? It, again, for me, just doesn't quite work. Which culminates in the moment where he's talking to Flynn's ghost program. They don't really say what it is, and I'll be honest, I don't mind that. I kind of like that they keep it vague if it's more of a, like, this is his literal ghost in the machine, or if, well, no, because he did die at the end of Legacy. So it wouldn't just be him in the grid, unless he survived what happened at the end of Legacy. Well, because he's not in the, like, big grid. He's in more like a small, self-contained grid, so I don't really know. But anyways, like, I think it's kind of neat in its own way. But here's what doesn't work. Ares is there to get the permanence code. Again, some shit happens. But he's there to talk to Flynn's ghost and be like, hey, I need this thing. This is why I need it. I have friends to protect, and I need to be able to be out there and be permanent so I can protect them. And they have a conversation that I do like, essentially about, if you do this, yes, you won't disintegrate in 30 minutes, but you don't get any redos either. This is just your life. I think Flynn even says, he's like, people call it a permanence code. I like to call it an impermanence code, because now something like errata continues. And I like that. But as they're talking and having these, like, philosophical and introspective conversations, it just cuts back to, snap back to reality. Oh, here comes gravity. Oh, there's Athena. And, like, Athena's destroying shit. And, like, you've got a big climax going on. And anytime it cuts from one to the other, like, oh man, there's this really intense climax. How much shit is going to be destroyed? Are any civilians going to get killed? Are they going to kill these main characters or not? And then you cut back to Ares and Flynn just casually talking about Depeche Mode. The sudden shifts are so jarring. Like, I was actively laughing. I thought it was hysterical. Which reminds me, there is a joke that was set up, and I was like, oh, that's actually really funny, but they didn't deliver. So, as Ares is talking about his beloved Depeche Mode, again, while all this other shit is going on, he's like, I kind of need to do this quick so I can save my friends. But have I talked to you about this? Do you have time for me to talk about your own personal Jesus? He's comparing Depeche Mode to Mozart. And he's like, yeah, like, I understand, one of them is considered, the greatest composer in Western civilization, and the other is Mozart. And I was thinking to myself, because he says that first line, and I'm like, oh, he's probably going to say, and the other is Mozart. He'll kind of make a joke, and that's pretty funny. I like that. But instead, he's like, one is the greatest composer in Western civilization, and the other, it's this great blend of, electronica and, like, melody and heart, like, whatever it was that he said. I was like, you had a really good setup, but then just didn't quite follow through with it. And sure, you can make the arguments, like, they weren't trying to tell a joke there. They were going for something more sincere, which, I mean, fair, but I don't know. I was felt a little disappointed by that. I was like, man, like, you had it there. But I'm gonna be honest, those are really the only things that, like, actively didn't work for me. Not to say that, yeah, everything else in the movie is great. It's just, these are things that actively detracted from my enjoyment or just distracted me. There's probably other stuff where I was like, this is okay. Like, they definitely spend way too much time in reality than the grid, because the movie is way more fun when you're in the grid. But it's, like, fine. But here's some of those moments, though, that kind of made me think for a bit. One of them is a really awkward conversation between Ares and his human friend. And what's super awkward is during the hacking scene, he's looking through her file, which essentially means he's, like, viewing her entire life, like all of her emails, all of her texts, any video with her. And the vibe I got is that, he fell in love with her as this happened, but then it's not really followed through on, so it might not be that he fell in love, but it might be almost like he fell in respect of this other person. And there's a scene where they're driving and they're talking, and he, not in these exact words, but the implication is, after you find the code and you give it to the company, are you planning to kill yourself? And I love how awkwardly he brings it up, because it's one of those things, like, even though he now seems to kind of have a bit of a personality, he's still a robot. He's still not quite human. Of course this would feel, and not just, there's also the fact that this is a really uncomfortable topic anyways, but I like how just weird the whole thing felt. Like, it felt intentional. I don't remember her exact line, but her response is essentially, being human is really hard. And the things that make life worth living, like having love, romantic, familial, whatever, but like love and passion and like ambition, things like that, they are also what make life so painful. And again, he asks her what she's going to do without saying it exactly. And for me, she says yes without saying yes. But I really like the way she phrased it. And I remember thinking to myself as I was watching the movie, because at this point we're maybe about halfway-ish. And I kind of like went, this for me is like the first real like human moment I felt in this movie. Aside from maybe Ares like feeling rain for the first time, which I didn't really talk about, but I did like that. I was like, that got like a genuine, like emotional, like I didn't cry by any means, like that, like I felt that. And I wasn't expecting for anything to really resonate with me watching Jared Leto's Tron Ares, Teenage Kraken. But I liked that. I liked that part quite a bit. And then there's another scene like that. Again, it's when he's talking to Flynn about Depeche Mode. But Flynn is essentially trying to get it out of him, while also, like, clearly enjoying... Like, I do love Jeff Bridges in this movie. He's barely in it. But just his, like, vibrance and excitement, like, to be here and talk to this dude who's a robot, but is, again, kind of developing a bit of a soul, and seeing that he's, like, fascinating. Like, this is so cool. And you see him trying to find the words to say, I really like this artist because... But he gets stuck. And then it cuts back to Jeff Bridges just kind of nodding, and he makes this weird sound. I don't know, maybe I hallucinated it. Maybe it was just something in the background. I was like, he was making this weird, like, cat noise. But then it goes back to Leto, who just says... Like, I don't know. Like, I can't explain it. I don't have the words for it. But it's a feeling. Like, I understand why this is important to me, even if I can't say it. And I had another resonating moment where I'm like, I know that. I know how that feels. Both in the sense of just wanting to communicate an idea and it being sometimes really hard to do so. But also just when something's really important and really meaningful, and the words aren't quite there, for whatever reason, but you know exactly how it feels. But at the same time, if I'm being honest, it did fall a little flat. And it's specifically because we've only seen him, like, interact with Depeche Mode once before, where it was like he's listening to a song on the radio after having that, other conversation. And, like, you're really into them, and this feels out of nowhere. So, this moment, which is supposed to come across as, my mind can't articulate what I feel in my heart and my soul, also came across as, I'm really into this new thing, and I'm overhyping how much I'm into it, but I don't really understand it yet. And I was like, yeah, this on the one hand is like a perfectly written moment, but also just not quite there for me. Again, almost having kind of the same feel. It's like, I understand like why it didn't quite work, but I don't know if I'm articulating it well. Excuse me. But the third thing that kind of had me thinking for a bit was... there's a very notable allusion to Frankenstein in this movie. And it specifically is Ares reads the line, "Beware, for I am fearless and therefore powerful." And it sort of becomes his mantra throughout the movie. And, for him... Yeah, sorry, getting a little brainy trying to look at my notes. He's without fear of Dillinger stopping him or of him dying, even before he gets the permanence code. Like, I'm not afraid of this anymore, which is what gives him power to fight back against his creator and his master, and to protect other people, to protect his friends. And I do think in a way, this movie is sort of a retelling-ish of Frankenstein. You have a scientist who creates this life form, out of, his own hubris, but he rejects the life form's humanity. And this creation longs for acceptance, but finds peace in art and in literature. You've got the creature who, if I remember correctly, really got into Paradise Lost, and I think he particularly felt like close to the character of Satan. And then here you have Ares really liking Depeche Mode, but also resonating strongly with Frankenstein. And both of them turn on their creator and ultimately ruin their lives. But here's the full quote from where that comes from, because in the full context, it feels really different. Because for Ares, it's, like, I'm fearless and therefore powerful. So, like, I could stand up against you in the wrong things you're doing. And from the creature, it is like this declaration of unadulterated hate and a declaration of war. To quote, "Your hours will pass in dread and misery, and soon the bolt will fall which must ravish from you your happiness forever. Are you to be happy while I grovel in the intensity of my wretchedness? You can blast my other passions, but revenge remains, revenge, henceforth dearer than light or food. I may die, but first you, my tyrant and tormentor, shall curse the sun that gazes on your misery. Beware, for I am fearless and therefore powerful. I will watch with the willingness of a snake, that I may sting with its venom. Man, you shall repent of the injuries you inflict." Damn! Like, that is so much more intense. And again, like, both of them is like, this is how I stand up against my creator. And one of them is, I don't need to be afraid of you anymore. And the other is, you need to be afraid of me, buddy. And I don't know. I just kind of, I like that. But it's something that I genuinely wonder is, like, did the writers know, like, the full quote and the full context of it, and they intentionally kind of went for that difference of one is using it to be a lot more heroic while the other is not? Or did they just kind of see the quote, think it was really cool, see how it applied, and rolled with it? Like, I genuinely don't know, but it is something that I thought about. So, conclusion, like, finishing this up, overall, yeah, I really enjoyed myself with this movie. A lot more than I was expecting to. I went for the spectacular visuals and a killer OST, and I got both of those things. And while there are elements of the script that for me do kind of fall a bit flat or just don't quite work, there is just enough humanity in there for me to think this is more than just a popcorn flick. So, yeah, that's it. Sit down and watch Tron.